thank you so much for your film, The Remarkable Life of Ibelin. This is such a remarkable story, as the title implies, and it just came out on Netflix. We're talking on October 29th. It just released to Netflix this past weekend. How has this weekend been for you? How have you seen people receive the film?
It's been a very surreal weekend in many ways. Seeing that so many people share their reactions online, but also a lot of actually men filming themselves during and after the screening crying. So in a way we can see that online communities are really embracing the film, but also wanting to express their emotions after watching the film and sharing those emotions online, which is fantastic to see. And also, we got invited to show the film at the Samuel Goldwyn Theatre, which was a great honor. The Academy invited us there. I had a masterclass there, and they also did interviews. And also getting the chance to talk about how this film was made has been a fantastic experience.
Well, I definitely want to hear more about that. Let's start right at the beginning. How did you first hear about this story of Matt's?
I read about it on Facebook, actually. Mats' uncle, he was my teacher at school. He was also the person who taught me filmmaking when I was 11. He played in a lot of my amateur films when I was very little. And then he published an article about Mats' life. I read that article. I cried a lot reading it. I never thought of making a film out of that story because I thought it worked best as a written article. But I called up the uncle, Mats' uncle, and to just tell him how much that story meant to me. And that was when he told me that his brother had filmed Mats' whole life. They are also communicated in text form. So a lot of those texts were stored, and that was the moment when I thought maybe it's possible to recreate an actual lived Avatar life here in retrospective with the aesthetics from the game, and combine that with the family videos.
Mm. So that piece of it, using the aesthetics of the video game, that was in it from the very first time you thought of making a film?
Yes, correct. So that was the whole idea for the project. And then I spoke with Mats' parents, and they were very unsure if they wanted this to become a film. For them, it was like opening up a wound again. Mm. But I got the chance to digitalize the footage that I never digitalized before. And actually, the first footage I saw was of Mats as a baby. He was 8 months old. And right beside Mats was another baby I felt looked a little bit like me as a baby. But I thought also it can't be beginning a project and like it can't be. I was just laughing, ha ha ha. And then I saw my parents being there, and I noticed it's actually me. And I was so shocked. I could barely speak, but I called up my mother and asked her if she could look at in our family album. And she sent a picture of Mats and me together in a playpen, which was the most surreal feeling in the world. My parents and Mats' parents were friends back in the late 80s. But my parents moved away from Oslo when I was 1 year old, and then they lost contact. So I did not know that I met Mats in real life. So that was the very, very beginning of this project.
That's incredible. Did that footage make it into the final cut? Are you in this movie?
I did not have a cameo in the film. I was thinking about doing a cameo, but I did not. Maybe I'm too shy.
Well, you said that Mats' family was hesitant to make a film, like it was opening a wound. Tell me about the process of convincing them to make this film.
I think that the reason why they eventually, after some weeks, said yes was that they wanted to know more about their son. They were very curious about what kind of life he had lived inside World of Warcraft. And of course, they had heard a lot of stories and read a lot of stories, but it's something different with experience it visually. So they were very curious about that. And they also wanted me to kind of do research to find out more about these friends. So I think that was one of the main reasons why they said yes. And my initial pitch was, I want everyone to be included into this world, even my grandmother, and she's 94, I want her to feel included. And I had never played World of Warcraft before. I knew nothing about it. And I had seen friends playing it, and I felt very excluded because I thought it was difficult to understand what was going on, all these strange characters. So the whole idea was to make a film where we are interpreting all the roleplay dialogue, but with real dialogue, real events, real characters. This actually happened. But we are making a representation of the game, of the gaming experience. So that everyone will be included and invited in. At the same time, we hope that all the gamers that have spent like 20,000 hours in World of Warcraft will feel it's a good representation of their game. So that was the pitch, and I think that was also the reason why they said yes.
Yeah, you're right. It does bring people in. I have never played World of Warcraft. I'm not a gamer too much, but it does welcome people, including, I got a text 5 minutes before this interview started by some friends who have never texted me about a documentary ever. They said, "Have you seen this film on Netflix called The Remarkable Life of Ibelin?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'm speaking to the director in about five minutes." Yeah, it's reaching people, gamers or not, which I think is pretty incredible. And like you said, they'd pretty much filmed most of Mats's life. You had, I assume, thousands of hours of video to sift through, and then also all the hours of chat logs to sift through as well. Where did you get started? Did you create a general outline that you sort of wanted to follow and found pieces to match, or how did you sift through this?
It took a long time. We used over 2 years in the editing room with this film, and I think to take the role play dialogues first, the texts. I think that the first thing was to kind of condense that down. So we had like 4,000 pages. That was like a Google document that I went through over and over again. And then it's kind of reducing 4,000 pages down to, the film within the film, which is the coming of age story there. So I saw that there was a coming of age story there. Mats actually grew up inside a game. And I could recognize a lot of the same things I experienced in my own life, making friends, experiencing love, then losing 2 of your best friends, losing contact with them and getting that contact back again. So I think that the narrative in the film within the film is a coming of age story. And just to give you an example here, I'm going to show you now like how it looks like inside that game. I'm taking up my mobile here. If you see here, these are examples of roleplay dialogue. You can see the amount of text here. And the way they communicated was like, you can see here, Ibelin picks up a small flat rock and throws it into the ocean. He watches as it skips on the water surface. And then you have also dialogue, where they talk to each other, where Ibelin says, "Is that so?" So you can... So in total, it was 42,000 pages of this kind of role-play dialogue, which is very rare. And then we had to interpret that again. And what was fascinating with this is it looks like a movie script, a very detailed movie script. So Mats would write, "Ibelin seems sincere yet saddened." And then we had the possibility to interpret that. So that was the way we were working. And it was like an enormous amount of footage we had to reduce down. And then, of course, the framework is about sorrow. It's a story about grief. And the way we are telling that is it does have a almost symphonic circular structure where we tell the story many times. So it's told in the opening credits. The whole film is actually told in the opening credits, very briefly. Then it's told again by the parents, and the parents gets a very traditional form because they're a traditional family, talking heads and family archive. Then we rewind the tapes and we tell the story again from Mats's point of view, and it's a more essayistic stream of consciousness montages. And then suddenly the film becomes an animated film, and it's told through Ibelin. And then we meet Mats's friend, Lisette, and it's told from her perspective, within different form, 2D hand-drawn animation. So we're telling this story many times, And the last time we tell it is at the funeral. Then it's told verbally. And the reason why I wanted this kind of framework is that is how I have experienced grief myself. It comes in waves, and you are revisiting the person you have lost. That story you're revisiting many times, and grief comes like you go through different stages. So that is the framework and the structure of the film, and this film within the film is a coming of age story. So that was the kind of, when I had that idea, it was much easier to work around, and finding out what to include and what to exclude in the edit.
Well, you said that you, from the get-go, from the start, you wanted to tell this story using footage from the games. When did you know you could do that? Like, how did you know that you would be able to make sequences that were moving and that actually captured the sense of what they were writing in the role play?
That took a long time. So actually after 1 year in the editing room, the film didn't work at all. So the film suddenly becomes an animated film, and the audience were very invested in Mats in real life and his parents, and then suddenly the film becomes an animated film, and people were not invested into this animated character called Ibelin. So it was a huge struggle to make that work, actually. And that's always, when a film changes kind of the contract so enormously like this film does, for a long time I did not think this film would work. I think the reason why it began working was that we had amazing animators. We hired them from YouTube, actually. We found fan animators on YouTube. And they took kind of models directly from the internet and imported that into the 3D program. So this they are doing without Blizzard knowing about it, So we actually made this film without asking for permission after we had finished the edit. And then I think everything changed when we had two scenes in the film. The first one is Mats sitting at the tennis court and he's dreaming about women, girls at school, And it was so relatable. Everyone can relate to wanting to experience love when you're a teenager, and then it's ripped out of his fantasy. So in a way, we are showing the audience what Mats really want to experience, and we can relate to that. And then the first scene in the film is about love. It's about the hat being stolen. It's about flirting. So when we had those two scenes put together there in the edit, it changed the whole film. And we're also doing something that's not that cinematic there, cinematically. The first animated scene, Mats is narrating everything. So we are hearing exactly what we're seeing. But we needed that in order, both for the authenticity, but also for the credibility. And also it's almost like Mats takes the hand to the audience and leads them the way into the animated part. And then the film began working, actually. Then, you can take the audience anywhere as long as they want to go there. So we needed a reason to go there. And when that began working, the whole film began working as well.
And the casting of the voices helps sell that as well. How did you go about finding the right voices for these characters?
We used an agency called Visible Agency. It's a London-based casting agency. And all the animated characters' voices, they have a disability. So we used actually a casting agency that specialized in giving kind of jobs for disabled actors. And then we got enormous amount of voice testers sent to us, and we picked the ones that worked the best, actually, for the animation and for the characters. So Ibelin's voice is by Ed Larkin. He's also a West End musical lead star. He's also the first lead in a musical on West End that is in a wheelchair and in the history of the West End in 350 years. So they did an amazing job with finding, the sensitivity and the right voices, and they were also interpreting that role play dialogue. So they did also get more information about, the setting and what the kind of mental state those avatars were in. So I'm so happy about like the amazing actors. And I never worked with actors before because I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I was like, how do you actually direct actors, and how does that work? Like, so I was like, at first I just said almost like that, more emotions, more feeling. It's almost like this scene from The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, where they're conducting the orchestra, more emotion. And I was like, that's maybe not the right way of directing. So then I read some books about directing actors, and I've done really wrong things there. So I learned a lot with that process as well.
That's amazing. And also, I mean, this is your first time directing animation. I know it's not quite traditional animated film, but still, it's a new side of the medium for you. What was it like directing animators?
That was a great experience. Also because then you have the choices to you can change the camera angles, and you can work cinematically. And I love cinema. I watch one film every day my whole life, sometimes two in the weekends. So getting the chance to kind of really dig into a cinematic way of telling the story was amazing for me. I was also fortunate to have these great animators, these YouTubers, and this is their first job actually. So they had played World of Warcraft for at least 20,000 hours, so they knew that world very, very well. I knew the language of cinema, and they knew the language of gaming. So in a way, we kind of met between there. So you can see in how we use the camera inside the game is also very much influenced by the game itself. You can see a lot of, these 180 degrees turnaround with the camera. That is very much like the gaming experience, how you can change the camera. So it was kind of a meeting of two worlds, the gaming world and the cinema world. So and I think the main animator Rasmus Tukkia did an amazing job here also with capturing Ibelin's sensitivity, and I was feeding him with interviews, with the roleplay dialogue, so he would interpret that. And when we had the first draft of a scene, he would then send that to the people, Mats' friends, and they would give us feedback. My character wouldn't laugh that much, and we would tone it down. My character would have a little bit more brown eye color. So when we actually showed Mats' friends, his whole guild, the film for the first time, the people you see in the film, they've seen it many times and helped the animation to be as representative as they remembered it. But a lot of Mats' friends had not seen the film, any of it. And the feedback I got right after that screening was, this is exactly how we remember Ibelin, which is a great compliment. And then they said, but you did one big mistake, Benjamin. And I thought, oh no, will that mean another year of working? And I asked, what kind of mistake did I do? And they said, Ibelin liked women with more leathered clothes. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, yeah, I'll show you. And they showed me the clothes those women Ibelin were dating had. And I said, sure, I'll put it in. So we added some more leathered clothes, and then we locked the edit. So that was how that kind of dialogue was done with his friends.
That's amazing. Well, you said you worked on the film before, asking for permission. Did Blizzard Entertainment get involved on the World of Warcraft side? Did they approve this? Are you allowed to have made this movie? How did the approval processes work?
We at the very beginning we knew that this needed to be an independent production, and since it was possible to kind of take models directly from the internet and make this animation without them knowing about it, we did exactly that, and we call it the Norwegian way. And it was actually my producer Ingvild's idea first. This was her idea first. And then after almost 3 years of working on the film, when the film began, we saw this edit actually works very well. Then we contacted Blizzard and wrote them an email saying, we're a small Norwegian production company. We made this film where we're taking your IP and your world. Can we use your world for free without any involvement from you? And the reply we got was they wanted to watch the film. So we traveled to California. And right before that screening, I was extremely nervous because we did not have a plan B. I had to take some extra doses of asthma medicine in order to breathe. My producer she's always positive, so she was very relaxed. So we showed them the film, and I did not dare to look up at the screen during that screening. I just watched down on the ground, actually. And then after, when the end credits came up, I could see the bosses of Blizzard were crying, and then one of the main bosses turned around to us and said, "This film is fantastic. You will get the rights," which was a fantastic feeling. So we actually got the rights. So I think that was also the only way we could have made this film kind of independently. And of course we thought, if they say no, we will anonymize the game. But that wouldn't be the same. The whole idea is here to recreate an actual lived avatar life. Ibelin should look like Ibelin. And that's the whole idea. And to my knowledge, this is the first time a film is recreating an actual lived avatar life in retrospective with the kind of interpretation of the game with animation. This has never been done before, to my knowledge. And I hope that more people will do this in the future. There's been many great documentaries about games where they kind of record the game as it is. But here's an interpretation of that role-play dialogue, which makes it a bit different and also more including to everyone.
Absolutely. And it's beautiful. I think it tells such an amazing story of a life well lived that nobody, in his family knew about. I think it's beautiful. Well, Benjamin, this is your third feature documentary. I absolutely loved The Painter and the Thief, by the way. I love that documentary. I'm sure you learned so much on every film, and your craft improves every time you make a film. What are lessons you learned from your first two films that helped when it came time to make Ibelin?
That's a very good question. I think that for my first film, Magnus, that was in a way my film school. I was 23 years old when I began that. I did not go to film school, so that almost became my film school. When I began that project, I knew exactly what I wanted to say in beforehand. I knew the message right away. I'm very proud of that film. A lot of it works very well. At the same time, it's very predictable. And I think the reason why that film is predictable is because I went into the project knowing exactly what I wanted to say. So what I learned from that was that it's much more fun, and it makes also for a better film if you begin a project not knowing what you want to say exactly and asking kind of questions all the time. So I think that with The Painter and the Thief and this film, it was a lot of questions I asked. And I think for me, great cinema is all about asking the right questions and then trying to convey that cinematically. And it's much more interesting to ask questions than answering them. Of course, you will have something you want to say, a message, of course. But I think that it's so many ways of kind of asking questions, and it's all about asking the right question. And here it was like with Ibelin, it was like, is it possible to experience love with somebody you never met? Is it possible to make friends with somebody you never met? How is it like growing up inside a game? How is that kind of coming of age like? How is it like for a family to thinking that your son had lived a very lonely and isolated life without friends, and then suddenly after his passing experience that he had a very rich life? How is that grieving process like? You know, how do they have to reevaluate their son's life? So all of these kind of questions I had. How was it possible for Mats to change the lives of so many of his friends when they had never met him? How is it possible to be such a good friend when you had so little energy? Mats had so much pains. How was he able to help his friends in those fundamental ways? So I could go on and on. You know, all of these questions was a deep curiosity on my end, and I think that's the right way of beginning a process. So if it's one big thing I've learned, it's like about asking questions, and it's all about asking the right questions. You know, it's so many ways to ask one question. So I think that's the main thing I've learned so far.
Well, your work is incredible. I love it a lot. And documentarians all the time are making the leap into the narrative filmmaking, fiction filmmaking. Is that something you said you're a huge fan of cinema, watching so many films? Is that something that interests you, or do you feel like documentary is where you want to stay?
As for now, documentary is where I want to stay. And there's other people kind of making films about both The Painter and the Thief. Is like Blueprint Studio Canal and Neon is working on a fictional remake on that story. About Mats Ibelin's Steen story, Morten Tyldum is working on that as a director. So I think that there are directors that's much better than I am with directing both actors and directing fictional films. So I think that my niche is documentary. I think that I am good at getting kind of access and the trust of people, and I'm good at keeping that trust, and also including the people who are so kind of nice to me with like saying yes to be part of my project, and then including them in a way that they are very proud about the portrayal of themselves and the people they know in the film. So I think I will continue making documentary films, but I do also think it's so much fun with documentary films and so much to do and explore that hasn't been explored before. So I'm also like, my next project is also trying to kind of find new ways of telling stories in documentary form, which hasn't been explored before. And that is also a big like motivation for me. With The Painter and the Thief, we had the observational documentary, but at the same time we changed perspectives and jumped back and forth in time, and that hadn't been done before in an observational documentary. And the same with this film. We were recreating an actual lived avatar life with animation, and the next film will also do something totally new that hasn't been done before. So I think exploring new cinematic ideas in documentary is something I'm very, very interested in, and I will continue to do so in the future.
Are you ready to share anything more about that project? Gonna give me a scoop today?
I think that later this year or early next year we will launch the next project. I've been filming that since 2017, so it's been a project that's been going on for quite a while. Wow. And it's a story with many twists and turns, and a kind of also a very surprising cinematic form there. And it's going to be totally different than The Remarkable Life of Ibelin.
Well, I can't wait to see it. Very excited to see that and whatever else you do in the future. Benjamin, thank you so much for this film, and thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.